Good afternoon. It is November the 19th, 2016. Only one more weekly weather briefing after this one before we will finally see us entering into December, which will also be the beginning of meteorological winter. That begins on December the 1st, and we are only 12 days away from that. The countdown has officially begun, for me at least, for the meteorological winter. That also means that we will be seeing some cold temperatures eventually moving in, and that as we are heading into winter, it is going to be becoming more favorable for that colder and snowier outlook. Looking at this week's weekly weather briefing, today we are in the 40s, and that is all that we're rising to. Many of us still in the mid 40s as of noon temperatures, and that is pretty phenomenal for this time of the year that we are seeing those temperatures only in the 40s. That is below average. And I love how the meteorologists they'll tell you that how I mean not all meteorologists, but you do have some of those warm bias meteorologists that'll be like they'll point out the big warm ups right ahead of the cold front, but when it cools down big time right afterwards, it's hard for them to point that out. So that just kind of I wanted to bring that up because that just that's something that concerns me because you need to look at both sides of the story. I forecast the warmth ahead of it, and I forecast the cold behind it. The weather's the weather. You can't make it do what you want it to do. You just got to tell it as it is. And the way it looks right now, as it is that we will see those colder temperatures moving out of the area. Um, as Sunday's afternoon temperatures looking to be right about today. I think the GFS is going a little bit too chilly with temperatures on Sunday. It's showing colder temperatures tomorrow than it is today on Saturday. So I think that we'll see temperatures really just about the same, maybe even a degree or two warmer on Sunday, because by the end of the day, that high pressure will begin to move off towards our east, and that will bring those southwesterly temperatures into our area, and that will mean some warmer temperatures as well going into Monday. As we go into midweek, we begin to see another storm system taking place to our west. This might be another pretty big snowstorm for areas in the northern plains, areas that just got battered with one hefty snowstorm this past weekend. And that means that they will be looking at more snow on the ground. For us, that means more rain, which is much needed. We picked up a half inch of rain for the system that moved through yesterday on Friday evening, and it looks like we might pick up a pretty good dose of rain with this system as well. We'll see if the GFS stays consistent on this idea of a pretty good rain event for our area. It's showing right now around a half inch of rain, and it's been consistent with showing that. We'll see if it continues to do that going through the days ahead. If I have to do an update on that system, I will if it really just kind of dissipates with me. As we go into the end of next week, this is going into Thursday, which will be your Thanksgiving. It's looking like since that system, that cold front moving through on Wednesday will spell some colder temperatures, then that means Thanksgiving might end up pretty chilly this year. We might end up with temperatures in the upper 40s to low 50s, and that's a good bet. Not only is the GFS predicting this, but several other models are as well. So we'll see how it pans out, but most of the models agree a pretty chilly Thanksgiving is on tap for the region, which is complete opposite from what Thanksgiving was last year. I remember running around in a short sleeve last Thanksgiving because it was so warm outside. So maybe this year is going to be a colder start than we had last year. It certainly does look like it. Going into this time next week, it shows yet another storm system moving through the region. And what the GFS has continued to be consistent on is a pretty big snowstorm for the central plains and a pretty big rain event for our region around the end of November into the beginning of December. And the GFS even shows a few snowflakes wrapping around on the backside of the system. I don't know if that's going to happen. More than likely, it's not going to. But if it does, then I'll see it coming and I'll let you know. But that is the GFS loves to wound up those cold systems. It is a very cold biased model when it comes to the winter months. So we'll see if this happens. If it pans out, you never know. Keep those fingers crossed if you're a winter lover out there. But I think the idea to take from this is not that we're going to see snow, because that's more than likely not going to happen this close in advance to us right now. But what I do think is going to happen is that we'll see those colder temperatures moving in. The GFS continues to show, not only in this model run, but several other model runs, that we will see after this system, whether it's rain or snow, very cold air locked into the area, and that is going to mean that we will see that pattern change continuing to unfold. It's going to be a series of events that makes this pattern change unfold. It's not going to be a one-day event where we see one really good cold front come through and then it's just cold from there afterwards. It takes a series of events. We're trying to transition from fall to winter right now, and in order to do that, you have to have several systems to move through, and it lowers the temperatures each time behind that system very gradually, and by the last system moves through, we're looking at those temperatures hitting rock bottom and staying there for quite some time. If we look at the 500 height anomalies for the GFS model, it shows that we will see that trough for this weekend, as you can tell, picking up on the GFS, a little bit of a slight ridge right ahead of that Wednesday system of next week, right before Thanksgiving, and then that trough moving in for Thanksgiving Day. And then it looks like Black Friday will be a little bit warmer than Thanksgiving Day, so that's good news for shoppers, but still, you'll want to have the light jacket around. And what the GFS has been consistent on, you hear me say consistent a lot because I look for consistency when I'm going for 5 days or further outward. When I'm looking at the 0 to 5 day outlook, I can tell you specifics, but from the 6 day onward, I can't tell you specifics. I just have to look at the pattern and I'll watch for trends and consistencies in the model from from the 6th day through the end of that forecast to the forecast time period. It's really just a whole lot of luck and hardly any forecast that goes into that time period. So it is continuing to show that we'll see that cold air coming out of the Pacific Northwest, Southwest Canada, and moving into our region. What this is important, why this is important, is because if the cold air is coming out of this area, and that is our cold source, which would be supported by an AO, which is forecasted, as you can tell here, to go negative and stay negative for quite some time, then that means that we'll see that blocking over the top, which means we'll have to have a trough underneath. If that trough comes underneath and it's coming from the northwest, which has a lot of really, really high snowpack right now, then that is a good source for cold air, because that means that if it's going over that really tight snowpack and then it moves into our region, it's likely to be colder than if it was coming straight out of Canada, where they've been having some pretty warm temperatures right here in the southern part of Canada and very, very little in the way of snowpack until they got this pass system that moved through yesterday, which brought a pretty hefty amount of snow to those areas. But before then, even now, really, there's not a whole lot of snowpack up there for us to deal with. So the cold air coming through there, it's just kind of a tease, to be honest with you. As we look at the European model for the 0Z run, 12Z run is not done loading. It has been showing that we see that midweek system move through also, and then we see another storm system moving through, which is the same system the GFS has been picking up on. Remember that system that I showed you with a lot of rain and those couple of wet snowflakes on the backside possible? This is the same system, the European, although the European is much further south with this system and brings the low pressure right on top of our area. If this were to happen, then we would be looking at some very cold temperatures on the backside of it moving through, and we might end up with a bit more of a snowier outlook if we were looking at the European model, and yet the European looks to be having another system moving out of the Rockies right after that system as well. So the European has a really cold look to it also, as does the GFS as well. If we look at the 850 millibar temperatures for that system predicted by the predicted by the European model, then you can tell those cold temperatures wrapping around the backside of it, and that would support favorable for snowfall if the European was to be correct. But I don't want you to think, oh, Jacob's predicting that we're going to see snow in the end of November to the beginning of December. I'm not predicting that. I'm saying that as we go into that time period, it becomes a little bit more likely that we see, or not likely, it becomes a better chance to see snowflakes falling rather than what it is right now. The GFS snowfall outlook from now through the end of its 384-hour model run, it is showing that we see snowfall working its way southwards. So that means that, winter's coming, guys. You can't deny it. The NAO is forecasted to go negative. That supports colder weather. The AO is forecasted to go negative, as I already mentioned. That is forecasting colder weather. The PNA throughout the next 14 days is also forecasted to go a little bit positive, which would support some colder weather for the eastern and central parts of the United States. So, guys, we have winter's coming, and it is coming on strong, but we also have signs that are really holding back the idea of a really good first half of winter. I can't forecast what I'm about to show you um, right now going into January, February, March. But I can tell you even really the center and the middle and end of parts of December. This is the 250 millibar winds, and this is the GFS model. And what this has been doing lately is we have seen a very, very active Pacific jet. The Pacific jet drives in mild weather from into the western half of the United States, and it just floods the country with warmth. That is the main reason of why we've been so warm lately. The GFS is continuing to predict a very active Pacific jet, which also brings us a more active pattern, a more rainier pattern, which would give us more chances of snowfall, but you can't have snow without cold. The Pacific jet brings us an active pattern, but it doesn't give us a lot of cold air. But if we can get cold air but what is good is that we have all these other factors keyed into this that show a colder outlook going into the end of November into the beginning of December, and if we have factors pointing towards a colder outlook, and we have an active Pacific jet, if we get them to meet up at some point, then that would mean possibly a snowstorm for our region. If I'm going to play this fast because there's no point in looking at it going slow because you don't see the animation really well. If I go fast with it, you can tell it just continues to really show that active Pacific jet. Now this particular model run is starting to show it to break apart there at the end. If that were the case, then that would mean that we would see that southern jet kick in, and that would mean a very, very active pattern for us as well. And that is one thing you can tell the difference between them two. Here's the Pacific jet moving in, bringing us those troughs and ridges. But what has been very consistent on the GFS is right around Thanksgiving. Watch this southern jet stream pick up. That is where we get a lot of our winter storms from. Low pressure systems like this one that ride along the jet stream. If they can ride along that jet stream, then that would mean that we could be looking at some colder temperatures for our region. Watch this low pressure. This low pressure system, it picks up on the 250 millibar winds, and it just kind of rides along it like it's a train or something. And we see other low pressure systems that ride along it as well. And this is what is going to be bringing us that active pattern. The Pacific jet, that is looking very active, continuing to look active going into the beginning of December. And if the Pacific jet starts to break down by the end of the month and into the beginning of next month, then it looks like we will be seeing that more active pattern unfolding, which means drought relief on the way, and it looks to be like we will be seeing a much colder outlook. I posted a video that I recommend you checking out because any of my ideas in that video have not been changed at all. It was posted about a week to 2 weeks ago. I can't really remember, and it was and I was telling you that I think it was almost 2 weeks ago as of this coming Monday. And it was telling you about how I was predicting a pattern flip going into the end of this month. And it is looking like it is still going to happen. Like I said, it's not a 1 to 2 day thing. It is a very gradual thing that happens, but it's also not going to take a month to do so. This will happen in about a 2-week time period, and it is going to start right around Thanksgiving into the end of the month. So this last week of November, the first week of December, and I think if we can get past this, then we will be looking at a very cold and stormy outlook for December. We might end up with several inches of snow on the ground this coming December, which will set the stage for the upcoming second half of winter.